This is Land of Havilah, 1 Samuel 14b. Yahweh has the Philistines on the run. Israelites are coming out of every hole and cave for the chase. The battle's now in Beth Aven, which is a wooded area, Joshua 18:12. But unfortunately, the 600 Israelites with Saul aren't chasing very well because they haven't eaten, verse 24. The men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul had adjured the people, saying, "Cursed is the man who eats any food until it is evening, and I am avenged of my enemies." So none of the people tasted food. Comment: Saul knows the Philistines are on the run, and he wants to make sure the Israelites are single-minded in chasing and killing as many as possible, no letting up even to eat. But with nothing in their bellies, the Israelites are distressed with hunger. Why put the people of God under a curse? God has shown up to bless the people, not bring a curse on them. But Saul's curse is for real because Yahweh is with him, and Yahweh will back it up. As Samuel told Saul 4 chapters ago, quote, "Do what is appropriate for the occasion, for God is with you," 1 Samuel 10:7. Saul thought the curse was appropriate, and God is with him, so God will back it up, verse 25. All the people came into the forest, and there was honey on the ground. When the people had come to the forest, behold, honey was dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. Comment: This might be wild honey where a hive has fallen to the ground, or jars of honey dropped by the Philistines, verse 27. But Jonathan didn't hear when his father commanded the people with the oath. Therefore he put out the end of the rod that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes were brightened. Comment: Someone saw Jonathan eat the honey, verse 28. Then one of the people answered and said, "Your father directly commanded the people with an oath, saying, 'Cursed is the man who eats food today.'" The people were faint. Then Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. Please look how my eyes have brightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much more if perhaps the people had eaten freely today of the plunder of their enemies which they found? For now has there been no great slaughter among the Philistines." Comment: Jonathan disagrees with the curse. The Philistines left their food behind, and he says the people should have been free to eat. Saul put the ban in place to kill more Philistines, but in Jonathan's opinion, they would have killed more if they weren't faint from hunger. Verse 31. They struck the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon. Comment: The Philistines ran 16 miles west from Michmash to Ajalon to their home turf. The battle's over, and it's time to eat. Still in verse 31. The people were very faint, and the people pounced on the plunder and took sheep, cattle, and calves and killed them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood. Comment: The Philistines left livestock behind, probably what they raided from Israel. The Israelites are pouncing on it. Meriwether Lewis described a hungry band of Native Americans that managed to kill a deer. They were so pitifully hungry they pounced on it and ate it raw. This is what the Israelites are doing. But Yahweh's law says they should take time to pour out the blood first. Quote, "Any man of the house of Israel who eats any kind of blood, I will set my face against that soul who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people." Verse 33. Then they told Saul, saying, "Behold, the people are sinning against Yahweh in that they eat meat with the blood." He said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a large stone to me today." Comment: Saul intends the stone to be a place for butchering. He's trying to bring some order to the chaos he created. Verse 34. Saul said, "Disperse yourselves among the people and tell them, every man bring me here his ox and every man his sheep, and kill them here and eat, and don't sin against Yahweh in eating meat with the blood." All the people brought every man his ox with him that night and killed them there. Saul built an altar to Yahweh. This was the first altar that he built to Yahweh. Comment: Saul built an altar because he wants to offer animals to Yahweh in thanksgiving for the victory. This will be legitimate because from verse 3, Ahijah the priest is there. Ahijah can officiate the sacrifices. Coming up, now that the army's belly is full again, Saul wants to attack the Philistines on their own turf. Verse 36. Saul said, "Let's go down after the Philistines by night and take plunder among them until the morning light, and let's not leave a man of them." They said, "Do whatever seems good to you." Comment: The army agrees, but coming up, Ahijah wants to inquire of God first. Ahijah knows the scripture of Moses that says that Israel shouldn't go to battle unless they consult with Yahweh through the priest, Numbers 21:27. Still in verse 36. The priest said, "Let's draw near here to God." Saul asked counsel of God, "Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel?" But he didn't answer him that day. Comment, Ahijah the priest is the intermediary between Saul and God, but Ahijah says, "I'm not getting an answer," which leads Saul to believe coming up that Yahweh has withdrawn from Israel on account of someone in the camp has violated the ban. Saul remembers his history, how Achan violated the ban at Jericho in the days of Joshua, and at that time Yahweh sent Israel down in defeat because of it, Joshua 7, 11, and 12. Therefore Saul wants to seek the one out who violated the ban and put that man to death so that Yahweh will return to the camp. Verse 38. Saul said, "Draw near here, all you chiefs of the people, and know and see in which this sin has been today. For as Yahweh lives, who saves Israel, though it is in Jonathan my son, he shall surely die." But there was not a man among all the people who answered him. Comment, in other words, everyone kept quiet about Jonathan. No one wants to see Jonathan die. Verse 40. Then he said to all Israel, "You be on one side, and I and Jonathan my son will be on the other side." The people said to Saul, "Do what seems good to you." Therefore Saul said to Yahweh, the God of Israel, "Show the right." Comment, Ahijah will cast lots to inquire of Yahweh. This is the method by which Joshua identified Achan as the one who violated the ban in Joshua 7. When Saul prayed to Yahweh, "Show the right," he means, "Yahweh, please show us the right culprit." Still in verse 41. Jonathan and Saul were chosen, but the people escaped. Comment, it's down to Saul and Jonathan, verse 42. Saul said, "Cast lots between me and Jonathan my son." Jonathan was selected. Comment, Yahweh gave the correct answer. Jonathan is the culprit, verse 43. Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." Jonathan told him and said, "I certainly did taste a little honey with the end of the rod that was in my hand, and behold, I must die." Comment, according to the NET Bible translation notes, it's hard to know whether Jonathan said "I must die" as a question or a statement. He either said it as a question, as in "I must die," or as a statement, as in "I must die." Since he didn't speak up in the beginning, he probably assumed he was truly innocent, and in my opinion is probably a question. "I must die?" Verse 44. Saul said, "God do so and more also, for you shall surely die, Jonathan." The people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die who has worked this great salvation in Israel? Far from it. As Yahweh lives, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he has worked with God today." So the people rescued Jonathan, that he didn't die. Comment, back in the day, Moses rescued the people many times when they sinned by presenting compelling arguments to Yahweh, Numbers 14:20, for example, and the people have just rescued Jonathan by presenting a compelling argument. Yahweh showed the culprit by the lot, but he would not allow Saul to follow through with the execution. And here we have a picture of Christ. Christ was cursed to hang on a cross. Quote, "He who is hanged on a tree is accursed of God," Deuteronomy 21:23. But God didn't allow the curse to stick. Far from it. As Yahweh lives, the curse didn't stick, for Jesus worked with God that day. Verse 46. Then Saul went up from following the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. Comment, that was the end of that episode with the Philistines. Verse 47. Now when Saul had taken the kingdom over Israel, he fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines. Wherever he turned himself, he defeated them. He did valiantly and struck the Amalekites and delivered Israel out of the hands of those who plundered them. Comment, there have been some desperate times, but no more hiding in caves and holes, and no more having the crops and livestock stolen. Verse 49. Now the sons of Saul were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua, and the names of his two daughters were these, the name of the firstborn Merab, and the name of the younger Michal. Comment, Saul will have other children in the future as well. Verse 50. The name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz. The name of the captain of his army was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. Kish was the father of Saul, and Ner, the father of Abner, was the son of Abiel. Comment, Abner is the captain of the army. He's either Saul's uncle or cousin. The text is ambiguous on that point. Verse 52. There was severe war against the Philistines all the days of Saul, and when Saul saw any mighty man or any valiant man, he took him into his service. Comment: the king is conscripting all the best into his service as Yahweh predicted. 1 Samuel 15 is next at landofhavilah.net, 1 Samuel 15. This is the map of 1 Samuel 14. The battle started in Michmash when Jonathan and his armor-bearer climbed the cliff. As the Philistines retreated, the battle spread to the woods around Beth-aven, where Jonathan tasted the honey. Israel chased the Philistines as far as the valley of Ajalon. While Saul was king, he warred constantly with the Philistines, also fought against Moab, Ammon, Edom, Zobah somewhere in the northeast, and the Amalekites on the Sinai Peninsula. Chapter 15 is next.